What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Full-Time MMA, and we are here today to talk about UFC featherweight contender Shane Burgos leaving the UFC to sign with the PFL. Now, this is not your average PFL signing, or not the average fighter the UFC would release. This is a contender with legit skills to be one of the top featherweights in the world, who's currently riding a two-fight winning streak. Generally, when the UFC has a fighter that's not going to be re-signed, they give them tough matchups, and they make it to where even if you are going to leave the UFC, if you're not choosing to re-sign with whatever deal that they're trying to give you, then they're going to make it to where you leave with, they're going to try and get a loss on your record. They're going to try and give a win to one of their up-and-coming guys they're promoting. That way, even though you're going to another promotion, you're not leaving on a win streak, and they can't say, look, we've got some of the best fighters in the world over here. But the UFC fumbled the bag. Now, before I continue to talk about this situation, and a lot of the fighters the UFC have been letting go, a lot of the fighters the UFC have been fumbling the bag with, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. Don't be a baby back bagel biting beta male, because you know what time it is. It's full-time MMA. That's right, the UFC has been fumbling the bag with a lot of fighters. We can talk about all the way back as far as Rampage Jackson, Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald, recently Paige Van Zant, Mike Perry, Shane Burgos, Sergio Pettis, Anthony Pettis, Jason Knight. I mean, we can go on and on with these fighters that were notable UFC stars that had fan bases that people actually cared about, that the UFC has let walk away because they cannot any longer have a monopoly on the fight game. They no longer have all the money in the fight game to where they can kind of dominate and bully fighters into staying with the UFC. The UFC used to have a stranglehold on all the top talent, on all the top title contenders, and they were able to easily say they had the best fighters in the world. But now, with the ESPN deal, and with the UFC's new owners, and with all the new eyes and new fans of the sport, and the sport growing to new heights, we've got a lot more money in the sport. We've got investors in other organizations such as Bellator, PFL, Eagle FC. We've got bare knuckle fights out there. We've got all sorts of different LFA. We've got all sorts of legitimate martial arts promotions, whether it be bare knuckle, whether it be just different organizations. There's a lot of money in this sport, in combat sports, thanks in part to what the UFC has built. But what this is it gets other investors, other people with deep pockets, able to come and make bids at all of these free agents that would normally re-sign with the UFC. Now these guys are getting opportunities to have $1 million tournaments or just more lucrative deals than the UFC was able to offer them. The UFC can't compete with all these other millionaires in the game now, all these other $1 million contracts that are being offered to some of their non-championship caliber fighters. Because the truth is, guys like Rory McDonald and guys like Shane Burgos even, they are top talent, top contenders, but in all likelihood, they may never be a UFC champion. So can the UFC afford to pay these guys championship caliber money like Bellator or PFL, who can not only offer these guys sponsorship deals, more lucrative contracts, but they can also offer them stuff like Shane Burgos is negotiating, future commentating gigs. That's one of the things Shane Burgos talked about with signing with the PFL. Not only does he have a chance to fight in the playoff bracket for $1 million, but they also talked about potential commentary gigs in the future, which would also secure and give him the safety net of not just being a prize fighter and hoping the UFC gives you favorable matchmaking or you're able to become a champion and start getting those pay-per-view points. Now Shane Burgos has the potential to become a multi-millionaire without becoming a champion. Now he can just be the face of somebody else's organization as one of their top talents and a potential future commentator, to where it'll be worth it for the PFL to give him the big bucks to be a brand ambassador. So Shane Burgos is getting out of the UFC, and luckily he was able to catch the UFC with their pants down, and Dana White himself has said big mistakes were made when it came to Shane Burgos. Especially, it's not the fact that it's Shane Burgos, it's the fact that they weren't able to capitalize on his departure. As you see with guys like Nate Diaz versus Hamzat right now. Nate Diaz is not choosing to re-sign with the UFC. What are they doing? Feeding him to the wolves. They're giving him to a beast like Hamzat, to where it's, hey, if you're going to leave us, well, then at least one of our future stars can eat off of your name on your way out the door. But since the UFC probably thought they had Shane Burgos in the bag, they didn't realize how serious PFL or some of these other guys were about signing someone like Shane Burgos as a free agent, and now the bag was fumbled. Dana White saying big mistakes were made not signing Shane Burgos, and I'm sure the PFL is rubbing their hands together like Birdman right now, because Shane Burgos is a hell of a talent, currently riding a 2-fight winning streak from the UFC, and he's going to be an automatic legitimate featherweight title contender over there, and somebody very knowledgeable of the sport who they can trust to be on their commentary team in the future as a brand ambassador. So big win for PFL, bag fumbled by the UFC. And as I said earlier, man, this is just another fighter on the list. Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald, Paige Van Zandt, Mike Perry, Sergio Pettis, Anthony Pettis, Jason Knight. We can go on and on with legitimate fighters that had legitimate fan bases that we all knew and loved, that the UFC was not able to re-sign because they were choosing to look for more lucrative opportunities elsewhere. Because really the truth is, in the UFC, if you really want to be a multi-millionaire, you've got to be able to get a championship and get those pay-per-view points. Otherwise, there's going to be, if you're a marketable star, there's going to be other organizations that are willing to pay you money as a brand ambassador, as we're seeing with all of these fighters. And that just makes it to where the UFC, by day, has less of a case to say they have the best fighters in the world, because their roster is being picked apart by all these vultures, whether it's Eagle FC, the guys like Kevin Lee, Diego Sanchez. We can go on and on with legitimate UFC caliber fighters that are getting picked apart and picked off the UFC's roster one by one as they move to really encroach in the UFC's space of saying they have the best fighters in the world. Before you know it, we're not going to be able to know who's got the best fighters in the world, because as we know, any given day, anyone can beat anybody, especially in the MMA where there's all these weapons. I mean, so with that being said, man, it is what it is. The UFC fumbled the Shane Burgos bag. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. And what do you think about the UFC's decision to not be able to re-sign a lot of these fighters? Do you think the UFC is going to be... How long do you think the UFC is going to have the best fighters in the world? We're seeing guys like Usman. We're seeing guys like Adesanya. But in other promotions, these guys are just getting better and better, and their rosters are continuing to develop. So it'll be interesting to see. With that being said, it is what it is. I'm out.